And I'm just delighted that we have See Moua-Leske and Emily Watts here to help us out, as well as some others later on. So I'll kick it off to you.
All right. Hi, everyone. So this is our first administrative webinar, and I believe, Emily, this is our first time doing this together. So this is our debut. So we're really excited everybody's here to join us today. And by no means are we the experts. We just volunteered to help facilitate this so that we created a space for all of us to be able to come together and learn a little bit more about this. And we have Hanna from PELSB here as well too. So she's going to be the expert in making sure that we're able to navigate through recruitment.
Yeah, thank you everybody for being here today. As we get started, I'm just going to invite all of our presenters and our panelists and to be able to introduce themselves, show their faces really quickly, and then like all of us, they're going to go off camera until they come back to speak again. So we put them in alphabetical. Well, no, I thought we had them in alphabetical order, but we changed them. So, so See, I guess we'll start with you.
So See Moua-Leske, I'm the program manager for Southwest Adult Education down here in Marshall.
And my name is Emily Watts, and I am with Osseo Area Schools Adult Basic Education. Nicki, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Nicki Olalde, and I teach high beginning ESL with a Robbinsdale academic program.
Awesome, thank you. And Chelsea.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chelsea Ritland. I'm the Assistant Director for the Adult Options and Education Consortium of Hopkins, St. Louis Park, Minnetonka, and Wayzata schools.
Thank you. And last but not least, Hanna.
Oh, you're muted, Hanna.
Sorry, gotta do both buttons. Hi, I'm Hanna Younce. I work at PELSB with a wonderful licensing team here, and we work hard all year to get out all these applications and answer all the questions that we can. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much to everybody for joining us today. And like See mentioned, we are excited to be able to not only just help facilitate this conversation, but hopefully create the space where we can share some of our experience. Hanna can share her expertise with us, and then also we can gain from the collective experience of each other. So don't hesitate to use the chat as we go forward.
So our agenda today is to gain connections to other program administrators to share your ideas and tips. So we will be hearing from Chelsea and Nicki. We want to gain at least one new tip on recruitment of new teachers. So we have some ideas for you, meeting our licensing specialist from PELSB. That will be with Hanna. And then we will remind you of some PD opportunities for relicensure.
Don't forget, See, you want to mention the Padlet quick?
Well, yes. So we will put, Marisa will put it in the Padlet, a link to Padlet. So if you have any questions as we're going through here, and you don't want to forget it like me, like if I don't write it down right away or ask it, I'm going to forget it. So put it in Padlet. Hanna will have access to those. So she will be looking at those. And when it's her turn in the webinar, she will take a look at your questions and answer them for you.
Yeah, fantastic. So thank you for sharing that. And please don't hesitate, just pop that link open if you think of a question. As we get going though today, we do have a full group. We're super excited to have everybody here with us today. So thank you for taking the time to spend an hour or so with us. We are very curious to hear who is in the room with us today. So I believe Patsy is going to put a poll up for us. Or Marisa, thank you to both of you for your support. So just take a minute, please. And if you can see the poll, make sure that you take a moment just to answer the, answers are popping in. That's awesome. So our first question is do the teachers in your program need to be licensed? We know not all programs need to have licensed teachers in their programs. And then our second question is really around, have you hired a teacher with a tier 1, 2, or 3 license? For those of you who have hired licensed teachers. Oh, and I see Maureen Obidio, who's our new talent acquisition specialist from Osseo, is in the room today as well. She doesn't necessarily hire licensed teachers in my program specifically, but she's a huge support. And we look forward to not only her, but to other people who might be in the room who have expertise and a voice to share in this process as well. So thanks for being here, Maureen. So it looks like we have had a chance to sort of answer our poll questions. Can I have you guys close that and we'll share? Can people see the results to the poll? So it looks like about 88% of our teachers here today or staff or participants here today. So 15 of our 17 who answered the poll have hired licensed teachers, need to have licensed teachers in their program. But we do have participants here today who don't need to have licensed teachers in their program. So thanks for being here, because recruitment and staffing is still an issue, whether you're bringing in licensed staff or non-licensed staff. And so we're excited to hear from you today in this conversation as well. Kind of interesting results, at least from my perspective. I've been doing this work for 16 years and I hired my first non-tier 4 licensed teacher this year. So it's cool to see. We've got 11 of our 17 poll respondents who have hired a tier 1 teacher. We have 6 of our 17 who have hired tier 2 and 8 of our 17 who have hired a tier 3 license. And then 3 of us, haven't had the opportunity, either possibly because you don't hire licensed teachers or possibly because you just have had better luck finding tier 4 licensed teachers. So good to know who is in the room with us today. Is there anyone, I know Maureen is joining us from Osseo. Is there anyone else who has a different experience that they just want to make sure gets included? You can chat that in. We'll try to be responsive to that as we move forward today. All right. So awesome to have this much expertise in the room. As we get started, we just want to remind you, so C is going to remind you a little bit about what the state statute says around hiring staff.
So we wanted to make sure, I know, because we do have turnover in manager positions. So we wanted to make sure that everybody was clear about state statutes about what is expected of us. So for program managers to hire teachers, they either need to have a state license or they need to have a bachelor's or master's in the degree in English as their language or in the area that they are hiring them for. So that's the minimum, but you want to look over to who your fiscal host is or who your host is that they require, because I know in some school districts, they require that all your teachers have teaching degrees and some of them don't care. So make sure that you look, that even though this is just a state minimum, make sure you look to your program.
Does anybody have any questions about that? Or maybe you can chat those into the Padlet if you have questions around licensing and the state requirements, because we do have Hannah here in the room with us today, and she'll be able to help answer those as we move a little bit farther along in our presentation. But wanted to share some recruitment tips with you that C and I and others have sort of worked on and have used in our experience in hiring. And so I think the biggest one that we can talk about is make sure that you write your postings carefully, that you know your statute, that you understand the statute, and you know your employer's policies and practices. So again, we know not everybody here today is required to hire licensed teachers, but you want to know what the what the requirements are by your local employer or organization are, to make sure that you're adhering not just to the state statute, but to the policies in your own district. 2, if you are a person, there's a handful of us in the room today where they haven't had the opportunity or the need yet to hire somebody with something lower than a tier 4 teaching license. We've been using tiered licensing for a number of years now, but it can still be a little confusing for people. And the process is a little different for each tier. So make sure that you talk to your organization's leadership so that you know what sort of supports can be offered to tier 1 through tier 3 license holders for them and for you as an administrator, because when we bring new staff on, we want to make sure that we're going to be able to support them to be successful in staying. We all know how much time and energy it takes to recruit someone and to get them hired and onboarded, and we don't want to lose them because they get lost in the licensure process. There's another recruitment tip that somebody else shared with me that we've actually been using here in Osseo for the past year now, is asking talented people who you interview but you don't hire for any number of reasons, right? Maybe you only have one position and you've got 3 great candidates and you find yourself in that spot where you're like, man, I wish I could hire all 3 of these people. If you can, try to offer them to be subs in your program. It lets them know you get to know them a little bit better, and they learn a little bit more about your program. And it also never hurts to have more subs in your back pocket that are passionate about adult basic education, that know and understand what our programming is all about. If you work in a school district with a grow your own program, if you're in, let's say like Osseo, we have a grow your own program, make sure that you know those administrators and who runs those programs so that those staff know that getting a K-12 license may be acceptable in getting hired in your ABE program as well. So you want to make sure that those grow your own candidates know about adult basic ed. I'm a person that when I went to college, I knew I didn't want to teach K-12, didn't want to teach cute little kids. I didn't want to teach, awesome teenagers. So I didn't get a teaching license when I was in school. But if somebody had told me I could have taught adults with my K-12 teaching license, I totally would have gotten one. So the more we can help spread the word, the better. Sort of along those same lines, if you work in a school district and they're already being asked to host student teachers, see if your program can host a student teacher so that they can learn a little bit about what the options are in the world of adult basic education. Make sure you're leveraging your connections, human resources, your website, your social accounts, your networks. We all belong to a regional transitions, or we all have regional transitions coordinators. We all belong to regional transitions, I guess, what do they call them? Groups. Literacy Action Network, MCEA. But I certainly find myself in a space where when I have a job posting, I send it out to all of my colleagues in the West Metro area, just to see if they've got an employee who maybe is looking for more hours, or maybe is a teacher that's doing a great job, but really, really wants to teach EL and you don't have an EL opening in your spot, but I do, and vice versa. We know that people transfer around. We know that people want the flexibility. So don't be afraid to share those postings with all of your colleagues in your networks, because you never know what sort of collaboration or partnership might happen. And the last one that took me a while, but I think maybe won't have taken you quite as long to figure it out for those of you participating today, is to contact all of your candidates. If you do your own screening through whatever application process you have, contact all of your candidates to confirm if they have a license or ask them about getting one. For a long time, I was nervous to ask anybody that didn't have a license because I didn't feel confident I could support them through the process. So one of our goals today is to help you feel supported, to help you feel like you have the tools and the resources you need to support people through the whole tiered licensing process. So you can, hopefully be able to just broaden your applicant pool, because sometimes people will apply for jobs without a license, but they're really hoping for a district to be able to help them get through that process. So those were some of our top tips around recruitment for teaching staff, but we would really like to hear from all of you what recruitment strategies have worked in your program. So certainly feel free to unmute yourself or just to pop your strategy into the chat. So we're going to give people just a couple minutes to be able to do that. Job fairs and open houses are certainly a great way of recruiting for larger school districts. Again, it's incumbent on our administrators to make sure that we're talking to our HR staff or people who might be staffing those tables if we're not doing it directly, so that they know to help promote ABE teaching positions. Yeah, that's a great one. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Penny. Penny Junkie was just saying that she sent out an email to all of the district ESL teachers to see if they knew of anybody that was looking for a job. That's awesome. Yeah, that's using your network as, to the best possible way, especially for programs like ours, where we hire sometimes people who maybe are part-time, they're looking for evening. That's always a great way if maybe they want to add hours. Oh, Julie, yeah, that's another good one too. Staying connected with your district's HR. Cannot say that enough, can we? I think Chelsea's going to talk about that in her presentation in just a minute, but staying connected with your district's HR is huge. Just to be able to get, and Julie's is super specific, to get a list of recent retirees or part-time teachers looking for more hours. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I'm the only one when I say we have 2 retired teachers teaching in adult basic ed. They did full careers in K-12, and now they say they love the joy of teaching in ABE because it's the joy of teaching. Yeah. Hannah popped one in as well. Oh yeah, now there's a whole bunch of them. Sorry, I missed Cassie talking about getting volunteers into loving ABE. Again, that whole idea of kind of growing your own. Those volunteers that didn't even realize that they could get a tier license, but they love adult basic ed. How do we get them connected and talk to them about getting in that pipeline to become not just great volunteers, but then to become staff in our programs? Mm-hmm. Oh, and even Hannah, thanks Hannah, she chimed in as well, talking to parents, so families that might be able to find volunteers find staff that might be able to get connected. Kristen, yeah, Kirsten, Fugelsath, yep. She said she presents ABE as a unique and different teaching opportunity for those who really love teaching but are looking for a change. That's for sure my retirees. But Kirsten was mentioning, a couple of her applicants mentioned that that's what attracted them to take a look at their job experience or job descriptions, because they were having some burnout in their current jobs. Yeah, Clarice, you're right. Retirees, they're the best. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. Please continue to add things to the chat as you think of them. These are all great ideas, and we appreciate people's voices in the space. So thank you. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you 2 of our colleagues to be able to share their story going through the tiered licensing, and hiring and recruitment process, as recruiting teachers into our programs. And so I'm pleased to be able to introduce Nicki Olalde. And Nicki teaches high beginning EL for the adult academic program with Robbinsdale schools. And she's taught adults since 2007. She has a Master's of Arts in ESL from Hamline University, and also is getting her license, her tiered license, to become a licensed teacher in Minnesota. She started her path with Chelsea Ritland, who is the Assistant Director of Adult Options and Education, which is down in Hopkins, Minnetonka, Wayzata, and, Chelsea, I knew I would forget. One more school district, I apologize. Oh, goodness, yes, of course, St. Louis Park. So thank you. So thank you so much to Nicki and Chelsea. I will turn it over to the 2 of you. Nicki, if you want to start. We're going to hear from Nicki about her experience, and then Chelsea from her, Nicki from her experience as from a teacher, and then Chelsea's experience as an admin helping a teacher move through this process. So thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Emily. So I was lucky enough to be able to work for Chelsea and Adult Options last year, and I was really excited, super excited to be offered the position at Adult Options because I've only heard amazing things. And then I found, let them know that I've taught a number of years, but I do not have a teaching license. I didn't need one for the nonprofit I was at. And Chelsea informed me that yes, we do indeed need a license. And to my understanding, and I may be wrong, and you could correct me, Chelsea, I think that was last year was the first year that Adult Options was hiring instructors that did not have a tier 4, that had either a 1, 2, or 3. So it was a learning process for us both. I'm really glad that I went through it because I feel like even though I knew I had all these years of teaching experience, it just getting the license was very exciting for me. It just made it's what kept, I felt, me out of a lot of jobs when there was no shortage many years ago, because I never had it. I was under the impression a long time ago when I started my master's that you didn't need a teaching license, and then that found out you did and just never went back. But I think it's really important, and I think Chelsea's going to talk to this about staying in touch with your HR department and to help you through the process. It was a learning experience for us. I called PELSB a number of times. I've stopped by there a couple of times. I was lucky enough to live close enough to do that, but was very excited to receive that license in the email. So I have since left Adult Options, and is my understanding I do not need a license at Robbinsdale. However, after having gone through the process, I wanted to continue with the process. I received my master's in the last year, and that would bump me up to a tier 2, and just familiarizing myself with the tiers told me that I, do 2 or 3 years at tier 2, and then you can apply for tier 3. And then with the tier 3 license, you have the flexibility to move around just like a tier 4. I don't think I could get as far as a tier 4 from what I looked at that infographic. But this is a process that we're going to go through again here at Robbinsdale. And I think some other teachers are doing that as well. It seemed like it was a little bit scary as well, if you haven't done it, but there are lots of great folks at PELSB who are going to answer your questions, and I think they're accustomed to that. I would say just some tips I would give. Just make sure you have everything very organized. When you're sending information to PELSB, you can't piecemeal it. It all has to go together, one envelope. Make sure your signatures are current, close to the time that you submit the information. I had a signature I received in the beginning, put down the process application, and then came back to it, and the signature was too old. So I think it would be a good idea to keep up with the process with the teachers, let them know that they're there to assist, because it does feel a little overwhelming and scary, but once you've done it, you already get your case number, or I think that's what they call it. And then the process is easier moving forward. So yeah, so I got the tier 1, and because I have the master's now, I qualify for the tier 2. So working on that.
Thanks, Nicki. Yes, and I can pick up from there, Chelsea, with Adult Options. And because of this change, allowing for ABE school districts that employ licensed teachers to employ folks with not just a tier 4, but a tier 1, 2, or 3, we were able to hire an incredible teacher such as Nicki. Super grateful to have this tool at our hiring disposal, because I know that there are so many great candidates out there in our world of ABE that teach at CBOs or nonprofits and have master's degrees but they don't have licenses because that's not a requirement for where they were teaching. So super, super amazing example in Nicki that she was one of our first hires for a district sponsored license. And also Nicki's very gracious in how she phrased that, in that it was a learning experience because it certainly was. That was our first year doing it. This is our second year. Now I have a total of 21 teachers, 3 of which have a tier 1 district sponsored license and 1 has a tier 2 district sponsored license, who was formerly a volunteer with us. So that was a great recruiting idea that somebody mentioned earlier. A couple tips that I would share out now in the second year of doing this, and having gone through it with 4 teachers is first and foremost, just as many of you I saw in the poll have gone through this process. I'm sure you've done something similar, is just huddling with your HR director to start informing them that if your teachers are in a union and there is a license requirement, that we can now hire teachers outside of just a tier 4 license. And for me, that also involved working with the union representative, and then between the union president and the HR department, coming to agreement about language in job postings. And so I've included that in the slide there. And I've lost view of slides on my end. And I think we're on the next one with all the tips that I've included in there. So just making sure that you're very clear in your job posting language, and that the union is informed of how you're recruiting and hiring, and that they feel assured that yes, you are still requiring a license, but and you're advertising it as such. You're not saying that you're hiring unlicensed teachers, period. You're being very specific about the fact that everyone will need to be licensed. As I've learned now doing this, the first year we had more of kind of like an ongoing timeline throughout the year, that teachers needed to be licensed sort of towards the end of the year, kind of working on it throughout the school year. And that can become really overwhelming. Like Nicki said, we really want teachers just to be able to focus on their work and working with students and what they're doing in the classroom. And so now in the second year of doing this, I worked with HR and our HR rep that's in charge of helping us to complete the application packet. We worked in conjunction to make sure that all of this was complete over the summer. If you have the luxury of hiring teachers ahead of the start of the school year, make that a summer project. If you hire them mid-year, just make that something that you can complete as soon as possible. There's a link that I think might go out into the chat. That's a link to the tier 1 application packet for you to take a look at if you haven't done this yet. And you're able to see there what are the types of questions that you as the admin will need to complete, and what are the types of questions that the teacher will need to complete. So there's parts of it for us that we do as admin and that the teacher does. And as the admin, you do need to include in this application how many teachers applied for this position and what types of licensures did they have to really justify why you're hiring somebody without a license and going for the sponsorship. And just to communicate to the teacher what they will be responsible for, the processing fee, doing a fingerprint card, sending in transcripts, and then just filling out that portion of the packet. So those are things that definitely can take time, and to let teachers know to factor that in. Just another tip that I kind of realized along the way that's important to keep in mind, if this is something that's new to you, is the expiration is always June 30th of the year that you applied. So it's not one full calendar year from the day that you applied. It's within that school year when you applied, that constitutes the year. And when you're applying for tier 1 licenses, For the first year, there's 3 components that are not required: the cultural competency, the mental health, and the American Indian history. But for renewal for year 2 under tier 1, teachers will need to complete those. So other things to keep in mind, that you don't want those to be a surprise to teachers who did this the first round and then the first year, and then for their renewal year, you don't want them to be caught off guard that there's some additional trainings they're going to need to fit in, and to be in communication about when that can happen ahead of the second school year. Yeah, so I think the next slide has this infographic that Nicki mentioned, and I wanted to include that. This is the most useful tool that I have seen to help me understand the pathway for a teacher, and really important to know the maximum number of renewal years that's feasible under each license and what that process is going to look like for them. Is there going to be a path forward for them after the max number of renewals, depending on the tier that they're at? So just being aware of that, and then being in good communication with the teacher that you hired, so that they'll also understand if there's going to be an end to that road, or if there's a pathway forward to move through the tiers and how far they can get, just depending on their education level. I think that's all I have.
All right, thanks, Chelsea. Okay. So just some kind of I guess to look at it a different way is, I had a teacher who needs to renew next year, and he had talked about how there's some unions that have a 1-day renewal thing, so you can get everything all at once. And I had reached out to Patsy about it, because if your teachers are not part of the union, then they're not able to be part of it. And Patsy had reminded me that that's what regionals are for. And I'm like, oh, I never thought about it that way before. So thank you, Patsy, for opening my eyes a different way. But so that's another way too to market to your teachers about regionals, is that it could be served as a 1-day renewal thing. So that way your teachers get everything at once. So just kind of talking about some of those things. And then, there's so many different, Atlas has so many amazing webinar and PD opportunities for your teachers to get in it. So ABE Connect, Training Tuesdays, or Wisdom Wednesdays, they have such fun names, don't they? Education Minnesota, and that one's only for union members only. And then if you are not sure, just go to their Atlas website. They have tons on their calendar invites. They have conferences. We have regionals. So this year regionals, we have North Regional, and then we have for Spring Regional will be when South Regional is happening. And then I'm not sure, I think Metro is in the spring as well too. Oh yeah, Spring's Mankato. Yep. And I don't know if Metro's having one, Patsy. And then the PD catalog always has it too, but just check out events and you should be able to get all your PD dates there. And then some other ones too. LAN has Summer Institute, which is this coming next year. It will be in person. So I believe the location is to be determined. Oh, no Metro. Thank you. There is the Spring Virtual Statewide Conference, April 11th. And then they do have recorded sessions. So I don't know if some of you know this, but if you don't, you can get approved CEUs after you watch a video and you complete a form. So you just need to go to the LAN website and you'll be able to do that. And then Literacy Minnesota also has recorded trainings, and then online and webinar trainings throughout the year. So required competencies are a little trickier, but I am to tell you that there is a cultural competency training February 2nd or February 7th. And it will be held, Atlas will be hosting it. So if you need to get that, and also I will put a shameless plug in for my event down here in Marshall, February, let me look quickly here. It is always the week of Valentine's Day. So February 10th and 11th, we will also be having, it begins with us, and you can fulfill your cultural competency at that event as well too. And you get to come and hang out with me and get to listen to all the fun speakers. And then how to support professional development and CEUs for your teachers so they can maintain their licenses. So, market your PD with CEUs prominently, because nothing gets a teacher excited like CEUs. So really push that. Say, hey, this has CEUs. You want to get it? Here you go, attend it. And then work with your district to utilize any tools they have. So again, that one might be tricky depending on if they allow your teachers to participate, if they are part of the union or not. And then leverage your staff development or staff training as well too. So, incorporate sessions and practices and trainings that they can get CEUs for. They're more likely to show up to your staff trainings. So just kind
Oh,
of a
sorry,
recap.
Steve.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't mean to cut you off.
Oh, good.
If you go back a slide, I think that last one, especially if you're working in a school district, and you want to leverage sort of your staff development or your staff training events, if possible, you may have to be an advocate in your school district to get your ABE focused professional development through their PD committees. So maybe try and get an ABE teacher on the committee, or at the very least to talk to your committee members so that you know how to word your staff development events, how they get recorded in the system so that you can make sure that you can award CEUs to your teachers. Because there's nothing more frustrating than having to attend a PD event that's not really relevant to the work you're doing in order to get your CEUs. People would way rather, right? I don't know if any of us have ever had a teacher say, I don't want to go to an ABE focused event. That's what they want. That's why the work being done by Atlas and by Literacy Action Network and by all of our great partners is so successful and it's so well attended, because it's truly relevant to the work that we're doing in the classrooms every day. So see if you can't figure out a way to do that. If you have questions, certainly reach out to me, because I've got some help I might be able to offer to people around that. So sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. I'll get out of your.
Thank you for adding that. Okay, so just kind of a recap of what Emily and our section was, and recruitment. You got to get the word out there. I know we use Indeed, we use social media a lot. You got to figure out where your teachers are, or potential teachers are going to be getting their information from. So get it out there. Tiered licensing, you got to be open to non-traditional candidates. I know that even with K-12, they're struggling for teachers as well too. So we gotta get a little more outside the box. PD. So like I said, market your PD with CEUs listed so that it gets more people interested in attending that webinar or that PD or whatever it is you want them to attend. And then collaborate. Call your colleagues or support. So feel free to call Emily and I or your neighboring consortium and see what they're doing. Use your regional group. That's also a great resource. I know that I have an amazing regional group, and I see Ann here, so shout out to our regional. And then resources. We have Hanna here today, but talk to PELSB, talk to the state team, talk to Atlas. We have amazing support team around us, so please feel free to use them. And then lifelong learning. Where things change, and we're going to keep learning. And I know that it might change again in the future, but this is what it is right now. So we'll just have to figure it out and navigate it together and support each other. So, and then that's kind of the end of our session here. So we're going to bring Hanna on, but this is Emily and our contact information. So if you have any information about the slides or if you have questions for Emily and I, feel free to reach out to us. But I will introduce Hanna on, and just as a reminder again, if you have questions for Hanna, put it in the Padlet, because then she'll be able to see them and answer your questions. Anything to add, Emily?
No, it was awesome. Thank you. I think just as Hanna is getting her slides up, just as a reminder to everybody, Hannah's going to do a presentation and then she will take questions. So this is a great opportunity for you to be putting those questions you might have in the Padlet, but she'll also share a lot of information with us in the next 20 minutes or so.
There we go. Can you hear me okay? Okay. All right, so again, thank you for having me here. I appreciate it. There's a lot of really good information that was already given. And I'd like to thank Nicki too, especially for the good tips that were provided. I'm going to go over some of those too, probably, and we can do some of that as well. The reason why I put parents in as a tip is because when I went to school, I went into finance and I worked in that for a while. And then I had some children and I decided to stay home and take care of them. And I volunteered in the school a lot. And I had some teachers recruit me into their classrooms to help and start subbing. And then eventually went back to school and got my license and started being a teacher too. So I taught in elementary school. Actually, it was a K-8 and I taught middle level science, which I loved to do. So those are good places to recruit people because you never know who's going to want to do something. Anyway, so I just want to do a little precap, I guess, of our tiered licensing system. It's been in place since 2018. And just to give some kudos to our wonderful team that we have here, we have 4 licensing specialists on staff right now and 2 renewal specialists. And so far to date this year, we've done nearly 30,000 applications. So we are busy, but we work really hard to get the licenses out and to help people. Our customer service is beyond compare. They answer hundreds and hundreds of questions a week. It's just amazing how much they do for us and the team that we have here. We love to have people call us. We'd love to have people get the right information ahead of time rather than waiting to get it from somebody else and maybe delay their applications or what the things that they need to do. Anyway, I'm going to start off with the same slide here. This is really a high level overview of the tiered licensure system. Of course, within this are more detailed rules and statutes that are not easy to include in one screenshot or one infographic. So I'm going to go into a little bit more of this, really quickly go over it, and then hopefully be able to provide this PowerPoint for you if you need to go back to it at any point to look up any of the information. So I'm just going to go through each tier very quickly. So a tier 1 license, as was noted, it's valid for 1 school year. So tier 1s and tier 2s are per school year. So anytime from July 1st to June 30th that you would apply would be for that school year that you're currently in, and it will expire on the 30th of that school year. As you know, it requires a job offer. It's specific to the hiring district and the content area that's being requested. So for you all, you're looking for the ABE. And just as a side note, because this is something new and I don't want it to get confused with the special ed, the ABE license can be renewed up to 3 times. So you would have your initial license, then 3 renewals. There has been a change this spring for special education fields only, and those have been changed so that you can get the initial license and only 2 renewals. That's a current change. So don't get that mixed up. ABE can just still able to get the full 4 tier 1s. And then to qualify for a tier 1 license for any licensure field, anyone that holds a bachelor's degree can qualify for a tier 1 license. That covers all of the options below. And it, of course, for ABE, as long as they have a bachelor's degree, they're able to get that license. Just for clarification, I'm just bringing these other ones in just so they don't get mixed up with your licensure fields that you're looking for. But we have CTE and career pathways licenses, and people can get those if they have an AA degree in that area or a professional certification or 5 years of work experience in that specific CTE or career pathway licensure field. They do have now started to, for dance, theater, visual arts, or music, we're able to accept 5 years of relevant work experience in any of those fields to obtain a license in any one of those fields. So for dance, if you had experience as a dance teacher for 5 years, you'd be able to get a tier 1 dance license. And then for world language and culture licenses, if you have verification of being a speaker of that native language, you're also able to get a tier 1 license. So these are bachelor degree exemptions. They don't, but of course, again, you don't need to worry about that for ABE because you're in the regular licensure field. And then who can qualify for a tier 1 license? The district requirements are that it's the initial license is advertised for at least 15 days. And then to verify that you weren't able to find a tier 2, 3, or 4 candidate, which of course, if you could, you wouldn't be looking for a tier 1 probably. The district and applicant requirements are that the district has to verify that they will have the applicant, the tier 1 holder, participate in a mentorship program and an evaluation, and that they are confirming or verifying that this person has the necessary skills and knowledge to do this position. And then for recruitment, some of the advantages and drawbacks that I put in here for tier 1s is that it's a really good way to just get into the teaching profession, get some teaching experience, try to figure out if this is something that you might like to do in the future without having to make a big investment into schooling or some other ways of getting to the license. It's just a really nice way to kind of get into the idea of teaching and what it might look like. Some of the disadvantages, of course, for a tier 1 is that you have to have a job offer before applying. It's not a permanent license. It is only for the 1 school year, and it's specific to that content area into that district. It doesn't mean that you can't change content areas or move districts. It's just that for that each application, it's for that specific district and content. And then to apply for the license, the applicant needs to have, for the initial, it has to have a completed fingerprint card. We cannot issue a license until the fingerprint card background check has been cleared by the BCA. So nothing can be done before that. We don't even start processing an application until that fingerprint card comes in. So that's a really important part of it. So if you apply online, as was mentioned before, that you want to make sure things are ready to go beforehand. When a person applies online, the system gives them 60 days to send in some materials. So we can't do anything till the fingerprint card is in. So even if the district form came in, we couldn't start that application until we get that fingerprint card. And sometimes even if the fingerprint card isn't here and we get materials without it, they get mailed back to the person that sent them in. So again, it is really important to put all that together. Helps us so we don't lose things. It helps the applicants so they know that they sent everything in, and just makes it go a lot quicker and more efficient. And of course, for ABE, official transcript showing a bachelor's degree is all that we would need. But again, for CTE or those other fields, we would use something other than a bachelor's degree. And then we always need that district job offer form. And I think, as was mentioned before, it's that job offer form. The district form is kind of a difficult form. I'll tell you right now that I'm in charge of doing applications, online ones, or not the online ones, I'm sorry, the paper ones. And so everything that's in the paper ones, we try to put in the online system. There's a lot to put on that tier 1 district form, and to try and keep it on one page instead of making it into all kinds of pages. But the most important part of that form, besides it being completely filled out and signed and dated, is there's a question in there that says how many applicants were licensed in the licensure field being requested. So you may have had 5 applicants that applied for an ABE job, but none of them have an ABE license. So the answer to that question would be 0, because we're only looking for those people that are licensed in that licensure field that you're requesting on that tier 1 license. So that really helps to move that along a little faster, because we're not looking at the applicant that applied. We're not looking at somebody that has an elementary ed license. We're only looking for people that are licensed in the field that is being requested. So that's kind of a really important point to keep in mind. And then renewing the tier 1, again, you have to have the job offer. Every time you do it, you have to have that job offer in the district form. And then the advertising requirements for a renewal is 60 days if it's the same licensure field and the same district. So if you had somebody come in from a different district and they applied for a tier 1 in your district for ABE, even if they did ABE in the other district, it would only be 15 days. So because it's kind of like a new hire in your district, so it is a renewal of their license, but it's not a renewal in your district. So it's only required for 15 days. That's not always commonly known either. And then to renew that tier 1, that applicant has to attempt the content exams. Now ABE does not have any content exams, so that should not even be listed on their license as a renewal condition. It could be that sometimes we're keying it in and we accidentally include that, must attempt the content test before it can be renewed. If that is on a license that's only has ABE, it shouldn't be on there. So you can contact us, we can remove it, but know that there is no ABE content test, so it should not be on a license as a renewal condition. And then, as was mentioned before, there's cultural competency, mental health, and American Indian history and culture trainings that are required before they can renew. The district checks that off as verifying that those have been completed on the tier 1 form. And then you can leave the content checkbox blank or check it if you want. We know for ABE, there's no testing for that. And then just be aware that renewal conditions can change from year to year, but whatever was in place at the time that person got that initial tier 1 license are the renewal conditions they have to meet. So if we say, add a new one on to say, for something else, unless it's on their license, they don't have to meet that condition, only the ones that are on the license. Once a person meets those renewal conditions after the first tier 1, then they don't have to do them again for any additional tier 1s. Just so make sure you understand that they don't have to test again or anything. And the trainings are not needed again, and because they're gonna just keep on it. They'll say from after the first one, that's the initial tier 1 that's issued that has all the renewal conditions on it. The next tier 1 will say this is your second tier 1 license, and that will be all that will be on it. So there will be no more trainings. So then the tier 2 license is similar, but it's for 2 school years, again, 2 school years. So that it does expire June 30th, and it's within that time frame again. Again, it requires a job offer specific to the district and the content. The applicant and the district actually are co-applying for the tier 1 and tier 2 licenses, and it does not require testing to apply. And then the qualifications for a tier 2, there's multiple ways to qualify. The person can be enrolled in a Minnesota teacher preparation program. And then for ABE, I'm trying to think, I don't think there's no Minnesota programs. I don't think for ABE, is there? I don't remember right now. But it can't be an out-of-state program. It has to be a Minnesota program. The person could hold a master's degree in the content area. And then they could receive the tier 2 license, or they could have completed teacher preparation program in the content area, but they haven't been able to meet the tier 3 requirements yet. So in some cases, there might be testing that's required for out of state, or they just, they didn't get the license in their state yet because they needed to be testing. But generally, if this is a Minnesota program completer, they've completed all this and they qualify for a tier 3 because we already have set all those requirements up in the preparation program. And then again, just to reiterate that whenever we have a tier 2 license, it has to be any way that you qualify must be directly linked to the licensure field being requested. And then some of the advantages for a tier 2 is you don't have to do the testing, which is helpful. And another way, again, to get started teaching in Minnesota to see if this is something that you would like to keep doing without having a huge investment to start off. And then again, it does require a job offer. It's not a permanent license. It's for 2 school years, and it's specific to that hiring district. To apply for a tier 2 license, again, we need the fingerprint card, and we need the official transcript showing the BA, or if it's a BA degree exemption field, we would need that, and then the district job offer form. What may be needed is if they're enrolled in a Minnesota program, we have a form in the tier 2 application to verify through the preparation program that this individual is enrolled in the program. So we may need a recommendation from a teacher prep program that says they completed the program in another state, but they didn't do the testing or haven't got the license in that state. And so it's not, can't be licensed as a tier 3 yet. And possibly if it's a master's degree, that they're meeting the requirement with, then they would have the post-baccalaureate transcripts that they would send in. Renewing a tier 2 for the first time, they must have a job offer as always, and then meeting the trainings. And again, they may change from year to year. It's the same as the tier 1. It's whatever's listed on their application is what they would have to complete. The tier 3, this is a full professional license valid for 3 years. It does not require a job offer and it can be renewed unlimited times as long as the renewal requirements are met. Tier 3 now has a lot of ways to get licensed. So first one would be completing the Minnesota Teacher Preparation Program. There's no testing required in this. They've already got everything in the Minnesota program. It's been approved by Minnesota. So everything is fine on that one. Another way is if they've completed an out-of-state teacher preparation program with equivalent student teaching. If the person hasn't done student teaching in the licensure field in their out-of-state program, PELSB also accepts 2 or more years of teaching experience in that licensure field. That's used in lieu of the student teaching then. So they can still work on getting a license, but they have had to have completed a teacher preparation program. And then they also either have to have the license in that same state as the preparation or have had testing in that same state. With that all met, then they are waived from having to do any Minnesota testing. Another option that's becoming way more popular lately is to use PELSB's licensure via portfolio. Person that completes this works with the portfolio specialist, and once completed for tier 3, they would not have any testing required for that either. And that's been a change because I think in the past we've had that they would have to do testing and they can only stay on a tier 3. And as you'll see with tier 4, we're able to move them up now. Another option is if a person from out of state or out of country had 2 years of teaching experience and they held a license in that state, but they didn't complete a teacher preparation program, which occurs quite often. They could send in information on that with their application. And then in that instance, then they would have to do our Minnesota testing, and it would require the content testing and the pedagogy testing if they apply. Some licensure fields don't have content testing. Most of them have pedagogy testing. So they would have to do our Minnesota testing before they applied and passed those tests to use that pathway. And then another one is if a teacher has 3 years of teaching experience on a tier 2 license, while not being placed on an improvement plan, but all 3 years have to be in that same licensure field, then Minnesota testing is also required for that one. Now for ABE, there's no content and there's no pedagogy testing. So there would be no testing for the ABE license. So they would have the 3 years on the tier 2 license. So what's happening with this is that being on a tier 2 license, some of the options to get a tier 2 license, if you notice on the previous slides, have gone away. So we're not using the methods or the 2 years of teaching and testing. They're only the ones that I mentioned before, but you can still get on a tier 2 with a master's or, you know, the other options being enrolled and then move up to the tier 3 that way. Some of the benefits and drawbacks, so the tier 3 can be renewed indefinitely. As long as you meet the renewal conditions, you can keep renewing it. It can be used in any district and it's a professional license. So that's a nice boon to maybe present to some teachers or possible applicants or possible people that might want to come into doing ABE, that it's really great to get your full professional license because, you know, then you're done. You don't have to worry about job offers and all that. One of the disadvantages is that may require passing the MT content pedagogy exams, but not always. If they do a Minnesota program or those other options, they would not have to do testing anyway. And then for ABE, they don't have that. So really, this one doesn't even have a disadvantage for ABE licensure holders. What's required to apply for the license is that fingerprint card as usual, and then the BA degree. And what may be needed is a recommendation from the teacher prep program showing that the person has completed that preparation program, possibly post-baccalaureate transcripts if they already have a BA and now they did a licensure or master's program after that. Teaching experience form may be required if they're out of state and they're showing that they've taught for 2 years, or maybe the tier 2 to tier 3 pathway, they have to have the teaching experience form completed showing that they weren't put on an improvement plan and maybe pass an exam scores. And then renewing a tier 3 results in having completed 75 clock hours And they must meet the renewal components in place at the time of the renewal. So there is nothing on a professional license that says what the mandatory renewal components are as they're listed on tier 1 and tier 2. This is something that has to be kept track of by the relicensure committees, because they may add them in, and sometimes they grandfather them in, sometimes they push them out a year to allow people time to get them in place and to be able to get them done before they would have to renew. Usually they give time to add them, because people, if you're gonna renew in January for June and they put something new in place, someone's not gonna be able to get out there and do that. So generally they put it out for another year to add that in, but it's always important to keep track of all the renewal components that are being added by the legislature. Tier 4 license is valid for 5 years. That's a full professional license, does not require a job offer either, and it's unlimited renewals. And then the pathways to qualify for a tier 4 license are have completed Minnesota teacher prep, completed an out-of-state preparation program, same with the student teaching, the 2 years, has a license for testing in the same state, completed PELSB licensure via portfolio. And now what's been added is national board certification. So if somebody has had a national board certification in a particular licensure field, they are able to add that or apply for that as a tier 4, no testing required. National board certification is, it's intense, and to ask them to do testing would be kind of a slap in the face. So we don't want to do that. And then if somebody has a tier 4 license, or they're applying for a tier 4 license, but they also have experience with the 2 years of teaching experience with a valid teaching license from out of state, they would be able to pull that up into a tier 4, because a teacher can't be on more than one licensure field at any time. So if they met requirements for a tier 4 in another field, they could move this other option and get a tier 4 with that option also, but they still would have to do the Minnesota testing for that licensure field. I hope that makes sense. So if you hold a tier 4, or you meet the requirements for a tier 4, that tier 3 options can come into play, and you would get a tier 4 for that, but you would still have to follow the requirements that would be needed for the tier 3 license. And then of course the advantages are it can be renewed indefinitely, it's portable to any district, it's a professional license. The disadvantage, which is really not too much of a disadvantage, is that you show 3 years of teaching experience. Not very hard. We have a form in the application that you can do that with, and it may require testing if you're using that one option, but generally the tier 4 doesn't require testing. And then to renew, same idea, 125 clock hours, and then meeting those mandatory renewal components that are in place when it's time for renewing. And then I just want to give you a quick overview of the bachelor's degree exemptions again, just so that you know about them and they don't get confused with some of the other full licensure pathways. The CTE and career pathways, again, they can have an AA, a professional certificate, or 5 years of work experience in that particular CTE or career pathway field and then they don't need a bachelor's. Dance, theater, visual arts, and music need 5 years of relative work experience. They would not need the BA. And then world language and culture need verification of speaker of native language. And then, so what that does is that those first 3, the bachelor's degree exemption takes the place of that BA part of that infographic, but then all the other things have to be met. So you still need to meet all the other tier 2 or tier 3 requirements that are in place. And then all of these pathways have to be in the licensure field that's being applied for. It can be a little bit confusing. In fact, a lot of this is confusing. It's taken us years to figure out how all this tiered licensing is going. And I'm not lying. Every single day, an application comes through that we have to talk about, because there's so many nuances and everybody's experiences and what they've done and the paths that they've chosen and work through it, so that we have to make sure that we understand those and have the most information, the best information we can to try to get them licensed. Our goal at PELSB is to get people licensed. So we try not to work against anyone. We definitely want to work with with the applicant and the districts to get people licensed. So we value your input. We value the districts, the teachers, everybody that has any recommendations for us on how we can do things better, knowing that we also are tied to rules and statutes, but things that we can do on our website, things that we can do on applications, forms. I do a lot of those too. So anything that we can do that makes your journey easier, we want to do. There's a lot of information on our website because, as you can see, there's a lot of things going on. But we always encourage you to reach out to us. We, again, would much rather work with you on the phone or and talk to you or email and get your questions answered as quickly as possible so you have the best and most current information. And with that, I think that I am done. So I'm going to stop sharing.
All right, thank you so much, Hannah. This is really helpful. Thanks to those of you who have popped questions into the Padlet. I've been trying to keep an eye on the chat. So if anybody has, if I missed a question specifically for Hannah, please don't hesitate to chime that in again or to try to boost its presence. But Hannah, we had a couple of questions that came in on the Padlet. I think the first one you answered, but we'll just take a quick look at it. A teacher comes with a tier 2 license in K-12 in Texas and a degree in early childhood from another state, and they come to Minnesota. As they're working in there, so they got a tier 2 license, as they're working in adult basic ed, are they getting they're not teaching in their content area. So I think the question is do they need to be teaching in their content area in order to work towards that tier 4 license? Or because we hired that person in adult ed without knowing that they didn't have an ABE license? What are at the end of the day, when they get their tier 4 license, what will it be in? Ooh, we gave her a stumper right off the bat.
Well, I'm trying to understand. So it's the one, is it possible to play? I missed, was it that very first one?
Yep.
The tier 2 license for K-12
Mm-hmm.
in
So
Texas?
their degrees in early childhood, but now they're, you know, like a K-5 license, but they were teaching, and their practical experience was teaching early childhood in another state. Now they're working in adult basic ed. As they work towards their tier 4 license, you know, if we're hiring teachers from other states, are they earning a tier 4 license in K-6 while they're teaching ABE?
So to be licensed to teach ABE, they'd have to meet the requirements set out. I don't know that I'm fully understanding this question, but so if they're teaching ABE and you want them to be licensed, they would have to meet any of the requirements for tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. She's teaching the other thing is if they completed a program, say in early childhood education, they may possibly be able to apply for a tier 3 or tier 4 and then do an out-of-field permission for ABE. So what an out-of-field permission is it's a permission that's requested by the district and the applicant, and it allows a licensed teacher to teach outside of their licensure field for one school year. And then as sometimes it's for this purpose because they're trying to finish another program. So an out-of-field permission could be one of those options to continue to teach ABE if they're licensed in another field. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you so much. The second question is this one on the Padlet. You have to laugh, right? I missed the beginning part of the webinar because I had a teacher come into my office and resign. Oh, the irony. The question is, can you teach ESL if you have a 4-year degree and are under the supervision of a licensed teacher?
Yes, anyone that has a BA degree can teach ESL.
Okay, so they don't have to get a tier 1. So the follow-up question is then they
Oh,
don't.
yeah, with a tier, they could get a tier 1 with the BA.
Okay, so they would need to get a tier 1 license in order to teach. They can't work under the direction of a licensed teacher. They would need to have a license of their own, which they would be eligible for.
Right, yeah, ESL is its own separate licensure field, and it does require a BA in order to get that one. Yeah, so to get them in the classroom, if they have a BA degree, that's the only requirement for a tier 1, as long as it's been advertised, of course, and you can't find another teacher that has a 2, 3, or 4.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So Astrid, I saw she's got her hand raised. She's so polite. Thanks, Astrid.
Hi, this is Astrid from Department of Ed. I just wanted to get a clarification, maybe from the person who asked the question and from Hannah. So my understanding, if this person had a BA in ESL and was only teaching ESL, according to state statute, they would not need a teaching license, correct? According to the state statute, the district may have additional requirements.
Can you say that again? If they're teaching ESL,
If they are only teaching ESL and they have a bachelor's or master's degree in ESL, according to the state statute,
oh, in an ABE program.
in an ABE program,
Yes,
they would be
yes,
allowed
that's true. Yep.
to teach
Yep.
with that BA in
Right.
ESL. So I don't know the person who asked the question. It's not clear to me whether the person with the 4-year degree, whether that degree was in ESL or in another field. If it's in another field, then that exemption would not apply.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, they can
Yeah.
teach ESL in an adult basic ed if they have a
Mhm.
bachelor's or master's degree. It could be an ESL, it could be an applied linguistics, bilingual education. Any of those can teach ESL in a ABE program.
And just as a quick reminder, somebody else chimed in and I would second that. While that is the state statute, it's really important that you check with your organization's guidelines because they may have requirements that are a little bit larger or a little bit higher than that. So
Yes, true.
they may not hire non-licensed teachers in their program. So you just want to make sure you know. Yeah. So the next question, is it possible to apply for a tier 1 license in adult basic ed? Then after 3 years of that license, apply for a tier 1 license in ELA to teach 3 more years.
So a tier 1 license think of it as it's for that individual, that applicant, that teacher. So that teacher can have the initial tier 1 license, no matter what it's in, and then apply for 3 renewals. So it's a total for a non-sped field, it's a total of 4 tier 1 licenses. Now, in our application, there is an option for additional tier 1 licenses, and those are based on different things. So, socioeconomic hardships, being in a high needs licensure field. There's different things in there like that. So if the district can verify that some of those are met, any one of those are met, then they could apply for an additional tier 1 license. Our goal at PELSB is to get people to move up licenses, so it gives them more security. Because it's only for a school year and it does depend on if somebody else is qualified and comes in to teach that, we want to help these people move up in the tiers. But yeah, it's 4 total, no matter what the licensure field is, with the additional option if a district can verify that they meet that any of those requirements. And there's also always an option to go before the board and plead a case that we need somebody, and the board can make that decision depending on what the district brings forward.
The next question, this one, Susie, if Susie Evans is still on the line, I might have you chime in really quick. How do we get new ideas and needs to the licensure committee for consideration? I'm guessing, Susie, that you were talking about the state licensing requirements?
No, so I'll chime in. Thanks, Emily.
Yeah.
For the tier 1 license and to Hannah, some of our positions are maybe a GED teacher 1 night a week for 1 hour. So this person maybe is an engineer at 3M, and one of their things that they want to do is teach GED and fill up their cup. but their life goal is not to become a teacher. They just want to do more, and they don't want to do it for free. So that tier license, I've lost 3 excellent candidates to support our GED program because they hit their 3-year maximum, and they have, advanced degrees. However, they still don't want to do it for free. So if I could fill the needs, and an ABE program has such onesie and twosie types of classes, just wondering if there was ever a way to say a tier license is great for the population of people who are maybe younger retirees, or some of our like neurospace engineers that want to come and work 1 hour a week in GED and want to get paid and apply for a tier 1. That's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's kind of hard because we look at it to be directly aligned to the licensure field, and ABE is kind of a different one. That's something that I can bring forward that we can talk more closely about. It's kind of hard because there's different licensure options within each licensure field, right? And so do we look at them more directly, or do we keep it more broad? So that's we've kind of been talking about that here at PELSB, about those options. And this is another one that I can bring forward to see like what we can do to look at that.
Thank you. We don't fit into anybody's box, not a school district box, not a
Right.
nonprofit box. And so I just
Exactly.
happen to have this connection with 3M people, and I want them to be paid, and I want them to show up. So
Right,
I
yeah,
appreciate you hearing that. So I'm considering my question answered, that I have stepped in front of the committee for a suggestion.
yeah, and I'm actually gonna bring this up in our next licensing meeting because we had something with this in another licensure field too, so we're starting to look at this a little bit more closely, just to see what the options there are.
Awesome, thank you. So our next question, for the tier 2 license, what master's degrees qualify as aligned to licensure fields sought? I have a teacher who's teaching GED math, who has a master's and a doctorate in math instructional design, but was not able to get a tier 2 license.
I would appreciate if whoever sent that one could email that to me and I can look more closely. And again, it could be that because it's math and we're looking at ABE as a total. And I think that kind of goes with the last question, like, how can we look at what they're doing with their students, as far as the specific licensure field, the specific subject that they're teaching, and not just as the whole ABE. So I think that's an important one to look at. But if I could get that one email, that would be a good one to look at as an to bring to the licensing meeting. So if the person that wrote that wouldn't mind emailing me that with that person's file folder number, then I can use that as an idea to bring forward to talk. That would be a great talking point.
That is awesome. Thank you. And it looks like the poster did chat in.
Yeah,
She's gonna
perfect.
give you a quick email.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
that's awesome. Thank you. And then the last question that we have in the Padlet right now is, it talks about years of teaching. So we have teachers that work 81 hours a day, 4.5 hours a day for 365 hours a year. And then teachers, just to kind of paraphrase, that work, more than triple that. Do they both count as a year of experience?
So according to the rule, they have to show 90 student contact days within the school year. There is no FTE requirement at this time.
But they need to work a year of teaching is 90 days.
A year, so we're kind of aligning it with the union, what the union says. It used to be 120 and now it's 90. So we've also gone to 90 student contact days.
All right, thank you. We have about 7 or 8 minutes left. Does anybody else have any questions for Hannah? before we do our announcements and some future PD opportunities for people? Before we let you go, Hannah, we just want to say thank you so much for taking the time and being here today. It's really helpful. It's also lovely to get to put a face to a name. So now we feel like, oh, we can call Hannah. You heard our part of our presentation. We had a chance to hear your presentation. I just really appreciate the partnership and the connection as we continue to try to navigate through all of the permutations. I know they exist in every field, but adult basic ed is just even just like a little different, than some of our regular K-12 buildings. And so I'm really, really glad to have had you here today. And I see a lot of people chatting in, their thanks and their appreciation. So thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me. It's always good to get more information here from other voices. So was very nice. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, thank you. And Hannah, if you don't mind, will you pop your email in the chat?
Yes.
If you can, just so that people have access to it. And then as you are doing that, I will turn it over to Patsy and Marisa, so that you guys can finish up our afternoon.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, and thank you to Emily and C and Hannah and Nicki and Chelsea. We really appreciate all your input today on what is clearly a hot topic. We had a lot of people here today. So we will have this recording on the YouTube channel, of course, and we'll send it out to anyone who registered but was not able to attend. And then I do want to draw your attention to the announcements document that I just dropped into the chat. This has all the things coming up, and particular attention, since you all are interested in licensure, on the cultural competency training that C mentioned earlier. If you weren't here for that portion, it's in February. There are 2 days. You have to go to both, and it's virtual half days on Fridays in February. So that's on that link that we just dropped. So that it will help with the cultural competency requirement for relicensure by the state. And then keep an eye on those regional events, because we always offer relicensure sessions at the regional events. So coming hopefully to a city near you. That's all I have. Anything else from the group? If not, if anyone who presented is still here, if you want to just come on camera and say goodbye, and we will stop the recording.